The ocean does not reveal itself easily. From the surface, it offers a convincing illusion: rolling blue water, sunlight glittering like broken glass, the rhythmic comfort of waves that seem almost friendly. For most people, the sea ends there, at the skin of light and wind. But below that surface, past the reach of warmth and sound, the ocean becomes something else entirely, a vast pressurized archive of human mistakes, forgotten ambitions, and secrets that were never meant to survive.
The America Ocean, what many simply call the Atlantic, holds more of those secrets than any other body of water on Earth. On the morning the container was found, the ocean looked calm enough to be harmless. The research vessel, Ardent Dawn, drifted in near-perfect stillness, its engines idling just enough to maintain position. From above, it appeared small and unimportant against the immensity of the sea. A white hull, a helipad, a crane folded like a resting insect along the stern.
Nothing about the ship suggested history was about to surface. The coordinates that had brought the Ardent Dawn here were unremarkable at first glance, a stretch of deep Atlantic floor more than 200 miles. Off the eastern seaboard of the United States, well beyond commercial shipping lanes. No famous wrecks, no recorded sinkings, no underwater cables, just a blank space on the map, one of the many places the ocean keeps to itself. It was precisely that emptiness that had drawn attention.
3 weeks earlier, a long-range autonomous sonar drone, part of a routine seabed mapping project, had returned data that didn't quite make sense. Amid the soft, featureless readings of silt and sediment was a sharp, geometric anomaly, rectangular, clean-edged, too symmetrical to be natural. At first, analysts assumed debris, a fragment of a modern shipwreck perhaps, or a collapsed section of industrial equipment lost during offshore construction decades earlier. But the more they studied the sonar return, the stranger it became. The object wasn't broken. It wasn't twisted. It wasn't partially buried. It stood upright, perfectly. The diver chosen to investigate was not the kind of person who enjoyed attention. He was known aboard the Ardent Dawn simply as Hale. No first name on record, at least not one anyone used.
In the world of deep-sea operations, reputations mattered more than biographies, and Hale's reputation was simple, slow, methodical, and unshakable. He had spent over 2 decades descending into places humans were never meant to visit. Sunken aircraft, Cold War listening stations, Blackwater trenches where light had never reached. He had learned, the hard way, that curiosity was both a tool and a liability. Hale prepared in silence. "Hi!"
His wetsuit was dark navy, reinforced at the joints with thin orange trim that caught light just enough to be seen in darkness. The fabric bore subtle signs of age, faint scuffs, repaired seams, patches that spoke of long service rather than neglect. His full-face helmet enclosed his head completely, integrating communications, oxygen flow, and twin lights mounted above the visor. He carried a handheld flashlight, even though his helmet lights were powerful. Redundancy was survival at depth.
The rest of his gear, multiple tanks, regulators, emergency rebreathers, was checked and rechecked by the surface team. No one rushed him. At nearly 4,000 meters below the surface, haste was not bravery, it was a mistake. When Hale stepped onto the dive platform, the ocean did not react. No waves surged, no wind shifted. The Atlantic simply waited. The descent began without ceremony.
One moment Hale was surrounded by daylight and machinery. The next he was slipping beneath the surface, swallowed by blue that deepened almost immediately. Sunlight fractured into pale shafts above him, trembling as if reluctant to let go. Within minutes, the surface vanished. Sound changed first. The familiar hum of the ship faded, replaced by the quiet mechanics of Hale's own breathing. Each inhale echoed softly inside his helmet.
Each exhale released a trail of bubbles that twisted upward, racing toward a world Hale was leaving behind. Light followed sound into extinction. At a few hundred meters, the ocean turned indigo. At 1,000, it became something darker. The water absorbed color greedily, stripping away reds, then yellows, until only cold blue remained. Marine snow drifted past him, dead plankton, organic debris, fragments of life falling endlessly from above.
In Hale's lights, the particles looked like a slow, silent blizzard. Time stretched. Descent always did this, Without landmarks, without sound or reference, minutes felt elastic. Hale focused on his instruments, on depth readouts and pressure indicators. His movements were slow and economical, conserving energy, conserving thought. At 3,000 meters, the ocean was no longer merely dark. It was oppressive. Pressure pressed in from all directions, invisible but absolute.
Hale had felt it thousands of times before, yet it never became normal. The human body was not built for this. Every descent was an act of temporary defiance. Then, almost without warning, the bottom appeared. The seabed emerged like a ghost. At first it was only texture, a vague, pale haze beneath Hale's lights. Then shape followed, flat silt, gently rippled by currents too weak to stir storms but strong enough to erase footprints over time. The ocean floor here was astonishingly empty. No coral forests, no dramatic rock formations, no wreckage fields littered with twisted metal and scattered debris. Just an endless plain of fine sediment stretching in all directions, disappearing into darkness.
Hale hovered a few meters above it, careful not to disturb the silt. Even a small movement could create a cloud thick enough to blind him. He scanned slowly, sweeping his flashlight in controlled arcs. Nothing. For a long moment, the sonar anomaly seemed like a mistake after all. An echo, a misread, a ghost in the data. Then his beam caught something that did not belong. A straight line, perfectly straight. Geometry, where there should be none. Hale froze.
His light traced the edge again, slower this time. The line remained, cutting through the natural chaos of the seabed with mechanical certainty. Another sweep revealed a corner. Another revealed a vertical plane. Rectangles do not occur naturally on the ocean floor. Hale adjusted his position, rising slightly, widening his field of view. As he drifted forward, more of the object emerged from the darkness, its shape assembling piece by piece like a thought taking form. It was large.
Larger than he had expected. A steel cargo container stood upright on the seabed, its long axis aligned almost perfectly north-south. Marine growth clung to its edges, thin layers of corrosion, patches of deep-sea organisms adapted to cold and pressure, but the structure beneath remained unmistakable. 40 feet long, 8 feet wide, standard dimensions. A container meant for transport, not for burial. Hale circled slowly, keeping his distance at first. His light skimmed across the metal surface, revealing rust streaks that ran downward like frozen tears. The container was old, but not ancient. Decades, perhaps, but not centuries. What unsettled him was not its age, it was its condition. The container was intact. No crushing, no implosion damage, no signs of catastrophic failure. The corners were sharp, the walls straight. The doors, still facing upward at a slight angle, were closed and sealed.
Alone with it, from a distance, the container looked abandoned. From up close, it looked deliberate. Hale drifted nearer, careful to keep his fins clear of the silt. The closer he came, the more details emerged, faded, stenciling along one side. Serial numbers partially obscured by corrosion. A warning symbol, its edges softened by time but still recognizable. Hazardous material. His light lingered on the symbol longer than necessary. Containers fell overboard all the time. Storms, collisions.
Poorly secured cargo. Thousands rested on the ocean floor, lost and forgotten. But most were damaged, cracked open by impact, torn apart by currents, scattered by gravity. This one had arrived gently. Too gently. Hale placed a gloved hand against the steel. The metal felt cold even through the suit. Solid, unyielding. He pulled back and hovered, studying the container as a whole. No debris trail led to it. No other cargo lay nearby. It was alone, as if placed rather than dropped.
As if someone had wanted it exactly here. The doors. Hale moved toward the front. The container doors were closed tight, secured by thick locking bars that ran vertically along their edges. The bars were rusted, but intact. The locking cams, normally the first points of failure, showed no sign of forced entry, no breach, no attempt to open it. Hale's light swept across the door seams. The welds were unbroken. The seal, though corroded, remained continuous. Whatever was inside had not leaked out.
And nothing had gotten in. He checked the stamped markings near the doorframe. Manufacturing codes. Shipping identifiers. One date, barely legible beneath marine growth, caught his eye. Hale felt a faint tightening in his chest. that had nothing to do with pressure. Late Cold War. Hale drifted closer to the container's side, angling his flashlight to skim across the steel at a shallow angle. This revealed details invisible from a distance. Pitting corrosion where salt water had eaten slowly into the metal. Colonies of deep-sea organisms clustered along weld seams, faint scratches that suggested contact with equipment long removed. He paused at a section where the rust thinned, exposing clearer markings, numbers, letters, partially legible.
He traced them with his light, careful not to touch. The code format was familiar. Logistics identifiers used by U.S. defense contractors in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The kind that didn't appear in public shipping databases. That didn't mean it was military, but it didn't mean it wasn't. Hale backed away again, adjusting his buoyancy with practiced ease. He wanted to see the container as a whole once more before committing to anything irreversible. He thought of the phrase drilled into him early in his career: the ocean doesn't hide things by accident. There are moments in exploration where discovery feels passive, something stumbled upon, something revealed without resistance. This was not one of those moments. This discovery demanded participation. If Hale left now, the container would remain sealed. The anomaly would be logged, analyzed, debated. Perhaps a remotely operated vehicle would be sent later. Perhaps nothing would happen at all.
If he opened it, the act could not be undone. Whatever lay inside had survived 3.5 decades untouched. Opening the doors would introduce light, water movement, and human interference for the first time since the container had been sealed on the surface. Hale was acutely aware of the symbolism of that moment. Deep-sea explorers often spoke of wrecks as time capsules, but containers were something different. Ships sank unintentionally. Containers were designed to be closed. This one had succeeded. Until now. The indicator light in Hale's visor flickered again, then steadied. Authorization granted. Proceed with limited access. No extraction. Visual documentation only. Hale closed his eyes briefly inside the helmet. Limited access. That meant opening. He acknowledged the signal with a slow nod, more for himself than for anyone watching. His breathing remained controlled, but he could feel his heart rate increase slightly, not from fear, but from the gravity of the task. He moved toward the container doors again. The steel loomed in front of him, massive and impersonal. Hale reached out and placed his gloved hand against the left door, steadying himself. The container did not respond. It had no awareness of what was about to happen. Hale reached to his belt and unclipped the cutting tool. It was compact, purpose-built for underwater work, capable of slicing through corroded metal with minimal disturbance. He checked its power, adjusted his grip, and brought it up to the locking bar. The bar was thick, designed to resist tampering, but decades in salt water had weakened it just enough. Hale positioned the tool carefully, angling it to avoid damaging the door itself. Sparks would be inevitable, but he wanted them contained. He paused again. One final chance to stop. Above him, the surface world remained oblivious. No alarms rang, no storms gathered. The Atlantic did not care whether the container stayed sealed or not. Hale activated the tool. The first sparks burst into existence like tiny stars, brilliant and brief. They illuminated the surrounding water in sharp flashes, each one sending a ripple of light through the drifting particles. Hale worked slowly. He did not force the cut. He let the tool do its work, guiding it along the weakest point of the locking bar. Metal fragments floated away, glowing briefly before fading into darkness. The sound, muted by water in distance, was still audible inside his helmet. A low, grinding vibration transmitted through his gloves. As the cut deepened, silt trapped along the door seam began to stir. Fine clouds billowed outward, reducing visibility. Hale adjusted his position, backing off slightly to let the particles settle. This was not something to rush. Finally, the bar gave way. The remaining metal snapped with a dull underwater crack, sending a small tremor through the container. Hale steadied himself, gripping the doorframe. The seal was broken. Hale shifted his grip and placed both hands on the door handle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a slow reluctance that felt almost intentional, the door moved. A thin gap opened between the doors, releasing a plume of trapped silt in stagnant water. The clown rolled outward, thick and opaque, swallowing Hale's lights and turning the space between him and the container into a shifting wall of gray. He waited. Visibility dropped to near zero. The ocean reclaimed the scene for a few seconds, reminding Hale how fragile human perception was at depth. He could feel the container in front of him, but he could not see it. Gradually, the cloud thinned. The gap widened. The interior of the container revealed itself not with drama, but with silence. Blackness pressed back against Hale's lights, absorbing them, refusing to reflect. He angled his flashlight forward and saw nothing. Hale hovered at the threshold, just outside the container, his body aligned carefully to avoid stirring more sediment. His lights probed the darkness inside, their beams swallowed after only a few feet. This was the moment explorers talked about later, the instant before revelation, when imagination filled the void more vividly than reality ever could. Hale did not imagine monsters or treasure. He imagined responsibility. Whatever lay inside was now part of the world again, part of human knowledge. The container had crossed a boundary it could never retreat from. He advanced slowly, inch by inch, until the flashlight beam finally struck something solid. A curved metallic surface, smooth, industrial, not debris, not emptiness, something structured, something intentional. Hale's breathing slowed further as he adjusted the angle of the light, widening the beam. More shapes emerged, repeating, aligned, rose. His heart rate spiked, not in panic, but in recognition. This was not a random collection of cargo. This was a system. The light fully illuminated the nearest object. It was cylindrical, large, painted in dull, faded gray, with bands of color still visible beneath the corrosion. Yellow, black, white lettering partially obscured but unmistakable. Hale froze. The shape was too familiar, too precise. He had seen similar forms before, not here, not like this, but enough to know what they were meant to be. His light drifted sideways, revealing another, then another, then another. They were secured in heavy steel racks bolted to the container floor and walls, each one cradled carefully, as if the cargo had been designed not merely to survive transport, but to remain stable under extreme conditions. Hale backed out slightly, widening his field of view. Rows of identical cylinders filled the container from end to end, dozens of them, possibly more. The container was not carrying miscellaneous equipment. It was carrying something singular, something dangerous. Hale did not need labels to know what he was looking at, but the labels were there. As his flashlight swept across one cylinder, white text emerged from the darkness, stark against the gray paint. U.S. Department of Defense. Below it, smaller markings, serial numbers, warning icons. Hale felt a cold, sinking weight in his stomach that had nothing to do with the temperature. These were weapons. Not crates of weapons, not parts, complete units, preserved, stored, forgotten, or hidden. He hovered there, motionless, his lights casting long shadows across the interior walls. The container felt suddenly smaller, tighter, as if the steel itself were pressing inward. The ocean had kept this secret for decades. Now it was Hale's burden to carry it back to the surface. Hale slowly backed away from the container, his movements controlled, deliberate. He did not turn his back on the cargo. He kept it in view, as if expecting it to change. It did not. The missiles, because that was what they were, rested in their racks, inert and silent. No lights, no movement, no indication that they were anything other than cold metal. But Hale knew better than to equate stillness with safety. He exited the container fully and hovered just outside the open doors. The interior glowed faintly with warm light, a stark contrast against the surrounding darkness. For the first time since he had arrived on the seabed, Hale felt truly exposed. This was no longer a simple anomaly. This was evidence. Of what exactly he did not yet know. Why had weapons-grade cargo been placed in a sealed container and left on the Atlantic floor? Why here? Why intact? Why undocumented? And perhaps most unsettling of all, had it truly been forgotten?